A very warm good morning to everyone present here. I'm Dr. Sushma Verma, professor in the Department of Pharmaceutics, Pharmacy Institute, NIT Greater Noida. It's my honor to welcome Dr. Muralidharan Bashyam sir as our first guest speaker for the AICT-sponsored online Atal Academy Faculty Development Program on Cancer Genomics in Healthcare System. Dr. Muralidharan Bashyam is currently working as the Staff Scientist Chief Laboratory of Molecular Oncology at the Center for DNA Fingerprinting and Diagnostics, Hyderabad, India. Earlier, he had been the International Visiting Scientist at the Wistar Institute, Philadelphia, USA, and International Visiting Fellow at the National Cancer Institute, National Institutes of Health, USA. He was also the International Cancer Technology Transfer Fellow, International Union Against Cancer, and Visiting International Investigator at the Department of Pathology, Stanford University School of Medicine. Sir has worked as the Project Associate DBT at the Eukaryotic Gene Expression Laboratory, National Institute of Immunology, New Delhi, India. He has done his BSc in Zoology with honors from the University of Delhi in First Division and Masters of Biotechnology from All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi, also in First Division. Sir has earned his PhD in biochemistry from University of Delhi. He has published over 100 research articles in various national and international journals of repute and presented around 150 papers in various conferences and symposiums. He has been the reviewer and editor of about 25 reputed journals, and he has been the member of various selection committees like the Research Associate and Senior Research Fellow, Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, and undertaken various projects of the DBT, DST, NIH, ICMR, and CISR, etc. So there's a long list to go, but I'd like to invite Sir for the first lecture. For the topic of the lecture is defining the molecular aberrations in early onset sporadic rectal cancer. To you, sir. Welcome, sir.
So I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me for this symposium, and I would request all the faculty who are participating in the FDP to you are welcome to interrupt me anytime during the presentation and ask if you have any queries or clarifications. What I'm going to do today is not stick only to genomics and its role in understanding cancer, but I will try to give you one example of one of our projects where we have used genomics to understand one particular cancer. So our lab works on 4 different cancers, and all the projects are dependent on patient samples. So we all our work and all projects start from patient samples. We try to understand the questions that the clinicians want to address in important Indian cancers, and then genomics is one of the tools we use. So why I'm giving you this introduction is that I wanted to understand genomics was only a tool. What is more important is to identify the biological or the clinical question you want to address, and then see if genomics can be applied, and if yes, then how and for what question. So as I mentioned, I'm going to give you an example from colorectal cancer, and okay, so as a form of introduction, the digestive tract of humans, all of you must be aware, and I'm highlighting the large intestine, which is the topic of discussion today. So is my pointer visible?
Yes, sir.
Visible.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Visible.
Okay, thank you. So this is the large intestine, which is a terminal part of the digestive tract, and it is made up of colon and rectum. Colon is the proximal part, and and the rectum is the distal part. So this portion on the left of your screens is called the ascending colon. This is the transverse colon. This is the descending colon, and this is the rectum. Okay, so this is what is the large intestine. And coming to colorectal cancer, it's mainly considered to be a disease of the Western world, and it's classified as a lifestyle and urbanization related disease. It's one of the most prevalent cancers in the world, and it's been in the top 5 in terms of deaths as well as incidence for more than 30 years. What we know about the cancer is mainly from the West, because that's where it was prevalent till about 10-20 years ago. And what we know from the West is that majority of the cancers occurs in people who are age 65 or above, and also majority of the cancers are localized to the colon. Okay, which means cancer of the rectum and cancer occurring in patients who are young is very rare, and that's not known from the Western population. But recently, even in the Western literature, they have noticed an increase in the cancer in the rectum as well as cancer in the younger population. But overall in the world, including in developing countries where colorectal cancer was very rare, but last 15-20 years, colorectal cancer has been described as something which is increasing in its incidence in the developing countries as well. Now, if you look at the world data, so in India, we have seen that, like I mentioned, colorectal cancer is now in the top 5, but earlier it was not listed in the top 10 cancers in India. So it's just happened in last 10-15 years, which most people attribute to the rapid urbanization which started in India maybe in the 80s, and that has resulted in increased incidence of these lifestyle associated disease. Another example being breast cancer, which is now overtaking cervical cancer as the most common cancer in females in India as well. So what we have done, because we wanted to first see if indeed the pattern of colorectal cancer in India is similar to the West, and we saw that it was not true. And we identified this subtype called early onset sporadic rectal cancer, EOSRC, on which the today's talk is based, as the major colorectal cancer subtype in India as against in the West. Because in West, as I mentioned, you have colon cancer and most patients aged above 65 years. In India, we found most patients were younger, aged below 50 years, and majority of the tumors were occurring in the rectum, not in the colon. So this is the first distinction that we found. Now the question was, since colorectal cancer is very well defined in the Western literature, if the same biological pathways which drive CRC in the West are also present in the India, then it becomes somewhat easy to manage our patients because all this knowledge is already existing in the West. So what are the known drivers of colorectal cancer from the Western population? The first and most significant biological pathway which drives colorectal cancer is the Wnt signaling pathway. Okay, so what do we know about Wnt signaling pathway? The Wnt signaling pathways depends on a protein called beta-catenin, which when present in the nucleus can activate various transcription factors and various oncogenes driving any type of cancer. So beta-catenin is known as an oncogene. But in the steady state cell where there is no requirement of these genes, beta-catenin is constantly degraded in the cytoplasm by a degradation complex which is made up of 6-7 different proteins: casein kinase 1, GSK3 beta, axin, adenomatous polyposis coli. So these proteins form a complex with beta-catenin, leading to phosphorylation of beta-catenin. Phosphorylated beta-catenin is then degraded through the proteasome degradation machinery, and there is no beta-catenin which can enter the nucleus. Some beta-catenin molecules are also anchored to the E-cadherin molecule in the cell membrane. So these are the two types of beta-catenin present in normal cells. Either it is degraded if it is free, or it is always bound to E-cadherin. So therefore, there is no beta-catenin available which can enter the nucleus. But when there is a signal from extracellular environment. This signal comes in the form of a protein ligand called Wnt. So Wnt ligand binds to its receptors LRP5 or 6 along with Frizzled. This activates the receptors through phosphorylation, and they recruit proteins of the degradation complex. So axin and some other proteins are recruited. So the degradation complex is destabilized. Beta-catenin is freely available in the cytoplasm. It can go into the nucleus and activate transcription of various oncogenes, which are involved in increased cell division as also cell migration and motility. So at a single shot, you are driving the first step of cancer, which is increased proliferation, as well as the second step of cancer, which is the activation of invasion and metastasis. So this is what we know about Wnt signaling. But how is it linked to colorectal cancer? So when the studies began in the West in 1980s to look at what mutations or what drivers are there for colorectal cancer, they found that it is mostly the Wnt signaling pathway which is activated in these tumors. And you can figure that out by looking at the localization of beta-catenin. So as I mentioned, in normal cells, beta-catenin is present in the membrane. So this is an immunohistochemistry where we stain for beta-catenin. And in this particular tissue, you can see all beta-catenin is present in the membrane. The brown color staining is in the cell membrane. But if Wnt signaling is activated, and as I mentioned, then beta-catenin enters the nucleus. Now, if you stain for beta-catenin, you see all the nuclei are stained dark brown. That is because in this tumor, beta-catenin has entered the nucleus. So if you screen tumor tissues by immunohistochemistry, you can find out if the tumor is driven by Wnt signaling or it is not driven by Wnt signaling. And what drives activation of Wnt signaling in these tumors was also figured out from the West. And they found that majority of these tumors have a mutation in the APC gene. So remember, APC is one of the proteins which forms a part of the degradation complex. And when APC is mutated, it is inactivated. It can no longer bind to beta-catenin and thereby releasing beta-catenin from the degradation, and it goes to the nucleus and activates the genes for causing colorectal cancer. So all this is known from the Western literature, that up to 70 or 80% of colorectal cancer is driven by APC mutation, driving oncogenic activation of beta-catenin. Rest of the tumors are driven by another pathway, and that I'll come back a little later. But here I also wanted to tell you that Wnt signaling is not only driving colorectal cancer, it's actually a very important signaling pathway to drive the regeneration of colonic epithelium. So every day in our large intestine, the cells in the lumen are constantly being lost, and the base of these sac-like structures which contain these colonic stem cells, these stem cells are constantly dividing, but their division is very strictly regulated. So they divide only that much so that new cells can be produced, and they rise up through this sac-like structure, which are called crypts of Lieberkühn. And then they reach the lumen where they have a limited lifespan, and again they die, and then new cells keep coming. And people have shown, and it is well known and established, that this regeneration of the epithelial lining of a large intestine is also driven by Wnt signaling. In fact, if you stain for beta-catenin in a normal small intestine or large intestine tissue, you will find beta-catenin in the nucleus at the periphery, at the base of these sac-like structures, whereas at the top, all these cells don't have beta-catenin. So these cells are not dividing. So all these cells are not dividing. Only the stem cells are dividing. That is why we find beta-catenin staining in the nucleus at the base of these sac-like structures. So now we know that Wnt signaling is important for normal regeneration of colonic epithelium, but something happens which we know is that APC mutation, which constantly drives beta-catenin oncogenic activation. Okay, and this is a trivia. You would like to know that the first discovery of the Wnt protein came from India in 1973 from Dr. Sharma, who was at that time working in the Indian Agricultural Research Institute, and he discovered this gene in Drosophila. Okay, so this is just a small piece of information. So I was talking to you about the other pathway. So 80% of colorectal cancers are driven by Wnt signaling. Rest of them are driven by inactivation of mismatch repair pathway. And what is the mismatch repair pathway? This is a pathway which is conserved from E. coli to humans all across evolution. And this pathway is responsible to correct the replication errors. So we all know that during DNA replication, the polymerase makes some errors. It can add an incorrect base or miss one base or add an extra base. And these errors are corrected by the mismatch repair pathway. But if the mismatch repair pathway is inactivated, then we find mutations accumulating in the genome. And because most replication errors occur in what we call repetitive DNA regions, which are also called microsatellites. So these are small repeating units of single nucleotide or dinucleotide. So this is an example of dinucleotide repeat, CA, CA, CA. And if mismatch repair is inactivated, then the polymerase will add more repeats than it's supposed to add. And that also leads to colorectal cancer. Okay, so replication errors are not repaired because mismatch repair is inactivated. So these are the two major drivers of colorectal cancer. The colorectal cancer, which is arising due to mismatch repair inactivation, accounts for about 15% of all cases, results in microsatellite instability because microsatellites are unstable, and it usually occurs in the proximal or the ascending colon. Okay, and what we know about the other type of cancer driven by Wnt signaling, these tumors exhibit chromosomal instability, meaning they have their genomes are altered, they have many chromosomal gains, there are losses, there is aneuploidy, there could also be polyploidy, there are sections of chromosomes which are translocating. So a lot of changes happening at the chromosome level. And we all know it is happening due to Wnt activation. And these cancers usually have poor prognosis compared to the other category. And this is usually happening in the descending colon or in the rectum. Okay, so again, this is all data from the Western literature. And during the time when we started our analysis of Indian colorectal cancer patients, and there was a paper published from the Cancer Genome Atlas, where they mentioned that both colon and rectal cancer have same genomic alteration. So they also had said the same thing, which we knew already, that Wnt signaling is a primary driver of colon and rectal cancer, and microsatellite instability is the other major driver of colorectal cancer. Okay, so we wanted to dispute this publication because we were trying to see indeed if rectal cancer occurring in the young patients is also driven by Wnt or microsatellite instability. Okay, and when we looked at this, the data presented in this publication, we found that this study was based on 276 samples, but they had only 5 early onset sporadic rectal cancer samples. Okay, so based on just 5 samples, they are saying that colon and rectal cancer have identical genomic alteration. So we went ahead and started our own analysis. So the time when we started this study, about 15 years back, we had collected 550 samples from the hospitals in Hyderabad. And now, of course, we have close to 2000 samples. So our general strategy, which we follow for all cancers, when we collect the samples from the hospital, these are after resection, meaning after surgery. We take a small piece in formalin for fixing the tissue and embedding in paraffin embedded blocks. And we take the normal part of the organ, that is the large intestine, as well as the tumor portion. And when the blocks are made, then we cut the sections, do the hematoxylin and eosine staining to visualize and show to the pathologist. We always take only those samples where there is good enrichment of tumor epithelium. And we also ensure that the normal, that piece that we have taken, does not have any tumor infiltration. And then we can use these sections for immunohistochemistry, for beta catenin. We can use it for microsatellite instability screening as well. The major part of the tumor is frozen in liquid nitrogen in the hospital itself, and we bring it and store it in -80 freezers. Then when we thaw these tissues to isolate DNA and RNA, we again take a piece in formalin, again go through the whole sectioning and looking at the tumor epithelium or the normals and doing all this analysis to make sure that whatever we are thawing is the same piece what was taken initially. So there is always a match. So we try to go back and confirm because we are working with patient material, so it's very important to ensure that whatever we are doing is accurate. And majority of the piece, which after thawing is used for isolation of nucleic acids, whether DNA or RNA, and we undertake genomic and other molecular analysis. Okay, this is a strategy that we followed. And the first thing that we did was to see, is there a difference in the proportion of tumors which show Wnt activation or microsatellite instability? And to our surprise, but of course we were happy to get this result, we found that all our patients which were classified as early onset rectal cancer, half of them neither had Wnt signaling nor they had microsatellite instability. Whereas in the patients who had um, who were elder, like above 60 or above 65 years, there the absence of these pathways was only in 17%. So this then gave us the first clue that whatever the US literature had shown was probably restricted only to colon cancer patients and only to patients who were aged higher than 60 or 65 years. The colorectal cancer subtype, which is predominant in India and which is very relevant to our population, the canonical tumorigenesis pathways were absent. Okay, then of course we wanted to know what drives this subtype of colorectal cancer in the absence of Wnt signaling. So then we went ahead and performed using microarrays when we did this study, and then later we also did the next generation sequencing based RNA sequencing. So when we did the microarrays to look at the gene expression profiling, we had access to 52 samples. These were all microsatellite stable, so there was no microsatellite instability. But we knew that some of them were Wnt positive, some of them are Wnt negative based on beta-catenin position, whether it was in the nucleus or it was in the cytoplasm. So nuclear negative or nuclear positive. So since we already knew the status of the samples, we could identify the genes using this particular approach, identify the genes. We could differentially split the samples based on their beta-catenin nuclear localization status. And next question was, okay, what are these genes? Are they different from what we already know about colorectal cancer? So we went ahead and subjected these genes to GEO, that is gene ontology annotation, and we found that of the 18 pathways which were identified, 11 of them were related to calcium signaling or bone mineralization. Next, what we did, we took all the genes, we copied their promoter sequences, and then fed into a database called transcription. There are a few databases where you can identify transcription factor binding elements. And the top transcription factor, which was enriched in the promoters of all these differentially expressed genes, was NFAT, or called NFAT, which expansion is nuclear factor of activated T cells. Okay, so calcium signaling and NFAT signaling is already well known in some cancers, but not known in colorectal cancer. So what is calcium NFAT signaling? So when there is an external signal for the cell to divide, calcium is released from intracellular stores like endoplasmic reticulum, or it can also be brought in from extracellular. And in the presence of calcium, a protein complex called calmodulin and calcineurin are activated. These are protein phosphatases. They act on NFAT and dephosphorylate NFAT, leading to its activation. So NFAT is kept in the cytoplasm in inactive form because of the phosphorylation. But these two phosphatases, when they are activated through calcium, they remove the phosphate. Now NFAT can enter the nucleus and activate transcription of genes involved in cell proliferation and invasion, similar to what beta-catenin does for Wnt signaling. So this is an alternate pathway which we identified for the first time in colorectal cancer. And that was only possible because we knew we were addressing a very unique subtype of colorectal cancer, which was not being studied anywhere in the world, and it was relevant for the Indian population. So next we had to show that is an NFAT transcription factor indeed an oncogene for colorectal cancer. So we went and did these experiments in cell lines. So if we overexpress NFATC in colorectal cancer cells, we could show that it activated all 6 of the differentially expressed genes which we identified using the microarray screen, whereas it did not activate axin, which is a Wnt signaling target. So this is like a negative control. Next experiment we did was to see if NF80 transcription factor is actually going to the promoters of these genes. So it's not only activating these genes, but probably it's activating directly because it's going to the promoters. And that we did using an experiment called chromatin immunoprecipitation. So here what is done is we permeabilize the nuclei and we lyse and use cross-linking to permanently attach the proteins which are already sitting on the chromatin. Then we use antibodies specific for the protein of interest. In our case, it was NF80, and you pull down the chromatin, and then you can remove the protein and the antibody, and then sequence or identify the DNA part that you have enriched. So if your protein is binding to a specific region, then when you pull down with the antibody, that portion will be enriched. Whereas if you don't have an antibody, then you have equal representation of all chromatin. So when we did that, we found that yes, NF80 is indeed associating with chromatin, which overlaps with the promoter region of all these 6 genes. Okay. Then next, we used a luciferase assay. So this is an assay where we have a plasmid construct where luciferase is a reporter gene and it doesn't have its own promoter. So we put the promoter of all the 6 genes that we have identified. So if you transfect NF80, it should bind to the promoter and activate this gene. But if you have some other gene promoter where NF80 is not supposed to bind, then it should not activate. And then luciferase can be assayed and its protein activity is high if the promoter is indeed activated. And that is indeed what happened. We had a negative control, which again is downstream of the Wnt signaling pathway. And when we use that promoter upstream of luciferase gene, NF80C could not activate, whereas all these 6 genes, their promoters were activated by NF80C. So using 3 different approaches, we confirmed that whatever differentially expressed genes we have picked up, they are actually downstream target of NF80C, which means that indeed in these tumors, calcium and fat signaling is activated. That is what is driving expression of these 6 genes. Then we also had to show that NF80 or its targets that we have identified are indeed oncogenes. So for that, we expressed NF80 along with 2 other targets of NF80 in colorectal cancer cells, and we showed that it increased the migration potential of these cells. And the same was also confirmed through a reverse experiment, which is using shRNA, we knocked down NF80C, and that reduced the migration potential of these cells. So using both directions, we confirmed that these genes are indeed oncogenic in colorectal cancer. And then we went back to our microarray data to confirm that the genes that we had identified, they are actually, they can split the samples based on beta-catenin nuclear localization status. So earlier we had done the microarrays and identified more than 100 genes which were differentially expressed. Now we ask the question that the genes that we identified along with NF80, could they alone, instead of having all the genes in the human genome, just these 6 or 7 genes were able to identify or split the samples based on the beta-catenin status. So indicating that these genes are indeed enriched because they are present specifically in samples where Wnt signaling is absent. And finally, we looked at survival data from TCGA, and we found that all the NFAT targets, when they are deregulated, the survival of the patients is poor compared to samples where NFAT targets are not deregulated. So this is another confirmation of the fact that the NFAT transcription factor and its downstream targets are indeed have oncogenic potential for colorectal cancer. So to summarize this part, we first identified early onset sporadic rectal cancer as a predominant CRC subtype in India. And we found that this was quite different from the colorectal cancer defined in the Western literature because we did not find activation of Wnt or MSI pathways. And we found the evidence of first non-Wnt signature. And more importantly, we identified calcium and fat signaling, which may drive this particular colorectal cancer subtype in the absence of Wnt activation. So if there is time, I can go ahead to the second part of the talk, but I knew we started about 20 minutes late. So
Yes, sir, you can continue.
okay,
We have
fine.
time. You can continue.
Okay. So next, so what I have shown you this far is the gene expression based genomic profiling. Now I'll show you what we learned when we did DNA based genomic profiling. So this part of the work was done by Pratyusha, who is now finished and doing a postdoc in Harvard. And for the competition analysis, we had help from our collaborator, Dr. Sabarinathan from National Center for Biological Sciences at Bangalore. And I forgot to mention the names, although their names were visible in the earlier slides. So the initial part of the screening was done by a PhD student, Dr. Ratish, and the microarrays related work was done by Dr. Raju Kumar. So we wanted to see what are the mutations which may be driving the early onset sporadic rectal cancer. So in terms of mRNA deregulation, we found calcium and fat signaling. But can we learn something more from mutations, and can we identify driver genes based on the mutation analysis? So we for this study we used 47 again microsatellite stable samples, which were again representing early onset sporadic rectal cancer, and we had tumor normal pairs. So we isolate DNA from these and we subjected them to exome sequencing. So exome sequencing is based on RNA probes which are applied to the whole genomic DNA after shearing, and these RNAs, because they represent only the exons, they will bind to the exons and you can capture them using a bead array technology. So you are basically enriching only the exonic portion of your genomic DNA, which is the protein coding region of the genome, approximately 1 to 2%. And once the next generation sequencing is done, there is a standard pipeline to identify the somatic variants. And then we call these variants whether they are pathogenic or not and try to identify driver mutations. So the first thing which we realized was that what is the mutation rate, meaning how many mutations per megabase of the genome we are identifying in all the samples. So you can see most of the samples we had less than 5 mutations per megabase. Few samples had a higher mutation rate, which was surprising because we had picked up all the samples which were microsatellite stable. So we know that there is no mismatch repair activation in these samples, but still there is some other deregulated pathway which is driving some of the tumors, because we found very high mutation rate, but most of the other samples were low, and our average was 4.1, which is close to what is known for colorectal cancer from the TCGA study, where their average was 2 mutations per megabase. The next thing we looked at was what type of nucleotide variations we are seeing. So as we know, there are different types of nucleotide variations, and most of the samples, the maximum nucleotide variation was C to T, which is known in the Western literature as well. But when we looked at the comparison of translation versus transversion, so we had almost an equal frequency of translation versus transversion, whereas in the TCGA data from the US, both in rectal cancer and colon cancer, they had discovered a higher proportion of transitions compared to transversion. So that was one difference which we found from the TCGA data. Next, we looked at what type of nucleotide variations we were finding. So again, all samples, majority of the variations were of missense type, and we found very few translation, termination, or frame shift or splice variations. So majority of samples had missense mutations. Next, we looked at mutation signatures. So this is um, important to know what could have been a driver of the cancer that you are studying. So for each sample, it is possible to identify the genetic or environmental causal event. For example, if you know that you have a lung cancer sample or a head and neck cancer sample, and that person was a smoker, you would find that they have a particular mutation signature. And so we wanted to know what mutation signature is present, and which will give you some clue about the carcinogen which could have driven the tumors. So the majority of the cancers had signature 1, which is based on deamination of 5-methyl cytosine. So basically leads to C to T changes, and this is known as a classical driver of colorectal cancer. So though we found differences between rectal and colon cancer, but the majority drivers still in terms of signature look to be same. We found 3 samples which had enrichment of signature 3, which identifies that these tumors could have arisen due to defective homology directed repair or homologous recombination based DNA double strand repair. And if you have this kind of defect, you get more indels or more insertions and deletions compared to single nucleotide variations, and these are the size of the indels is longer, and that we confirmed because all these 3 samples, the proportion of long versus total indels were much more compared to all other samples. Okay. So this was a novel mutation signature we identified. Then we also identified signature 9 and signature 17 in some tumors. These are related to oxidative damage or to polymerase NETA activity. So these additional signatures are very rarely reported for colorectal cancer. So this was a novel finding. Next, of course, we were interested to know which are the driver mutations, which are the genes which are significantly mutated in our samples. And the maximum or the gene which was most prevalent in terms of mutations across all samples were TP53. 68% of the samples had a TP53 mutation, about half of the samples had APC mutation, and about 30% had KRAS mutation, and about 13% had SMAD4 mutation. And these genes are already reported to be prevalent in colorectal cancer from the Western literature, but there the frequencies were much higher than what we found, which was not surprising because we were looking at a novel subtype, so we knew that we hope to find additional mutated genes. And the additional mutated gene that we identified was ERI2. So this gene is mutated in 11% of cancers, 11% of samples that we studied. And then ERI2 we know is part of a chromatin remodeling complex called the SWI-SNF. And this complex is also conserved in most eukaryotes from Drosophila to humans. And it is important for remodeling of chromatin, for transcription initiation, for replication, for recombination, for DNA repair. Many processes in the nucleus requires this particular complex. So we went ahead and saw that whether other subunits of the complex were also mutated in our samples, and to our surprise, we found that the mutation frequency of the SWI-SNF complex in our samples was 30%. So we have not only had ERID2, we had ERID-A, we had SMARCA4. These are all the components of SWI-SNF complex, and different samples had mutation in different genes. And the overall frequency was much higher than reported from the West. And for comparison, in the TCGA study, they did not find a single mutation, a single gene which is part of the SWI-SNF complex. So we were happy to find something novel, and it was interesting for us because we had other projects in the lab looking at SWI-SNF complex. So we were happy to find that SWI-SNF complex was a major deregulated complex in early onset sporadic rectal cancer. But this was a discovery which we had to validate. So as I mentioned, SWI-SNF complex remodeled chromatin, and there are 2 types of complexes. One of them is called the BAF complex, which has ERID1A or ERID1B as important components, and these are orthologs of ERID2. ERID2 is present in another SWI-SNF complex called the PBAF complex. The PBAF complex is known to transcriptionally activate tumor suppressor genes like P27 and BMP4, and it's known to downregulate oncogenes such as cyclin E1. So if ERID2 is being inactivated due to mutations, and that could be one reason for driving early onset sporadic rectal cancer. So we had to show that yes, these mutations were inactivating mutations. So from the tumor samples, we had identified 6 different types of mutations. Some were truncating, some were splice mutations, some were missense mutations. So we had performed next generation based RNA sequencing on some of these samples, And we found that the samples which had ARID2 mutation, their transcript levels were significantly lower compared to the samples where ARID2 mutation were not there, which means that these mutations are probably acting at the RNA level, reducing the levels of ARID2. Okay, and that's what you will expect in a tumor suppressor, because you would expect that the level goes down, and that's why the tumor is developing. We also tried to characterize some of these mutations. So one of the mutation was a splicing mutation, and we could show that indeed when we looked at the RNA coming from samples from a normal sample or a tumor sample which did not have any mutation, the ARID2 transcript was a full length. But the sample which had the mutation, we could see an additional transcript which was lower size, and we would sequence this transcript. We could see that exon 14 was missing. So this is the wild type sequence, the upper band, because it's a heterozygous mutation, and the lower band is from the mutated allele where the exon 14 is completely lost. And this is happening because of the splicing mutation. And we could find that if you look at the wild type sequence and you look at the mutated sequence, exon 14 is lost, the reading frame is changed, and you get a stop codon in the exon 15 itself. So you will either form a truncated protein, or the transcript can be unstable because it triggers a pathway called nonsense mediated decay, which will degrade all these transcripts which have a premature stop codon. Okay, so this data showed us that most of the mutations we have identified is one way or the other reducing the transcript, thereby it should reduce the protein, and that is hinting that this gene could be a tumor suppressor gene. So to confirm that, we worked on 3 different colorectal cancer cell lines where we used 2 different shRNAs in each cell line to knock down the expression of ARID2, which is shown here. And then we've also found that when ARID2 is knocked down, its ability to activate tumor suppressors like BMP4 or CDKN1B, which is P27 tumor suppressor gene, is lost. And we also found that its ability to downregulate an oncogene like cyclin E1 is also lost. So when you have loss of ARID2, the oncogenes are overexpressed and the tumor suppressor genes are underexpressed. Next, we saw if ARID2 is knocked down and it's a tumor suppressor gene, does it increase tumorigenic properties in these cancer cells? So again, all 3 cell lines where we had knockdown of ARID2, we looked at DNA proliferation assay using bromodeoxyuridine incorporation, and we found yes, the DNA replication activity is higher when you knock down ARID2. Then there is an assay called MTT, which measures cell viability. The cell viability was much higher when ARID2 is knocked down in all 3 cell lines. Next, we looked at colony formation ability, and colony formation ability was also increased in 2 cells when ARID2 was knocked down, and cell migration ability was also increased when ARID2 was locked down. And more importantly, 2 of these cell lines we injected into nude mice to assess tumor formation ability. So when ARID2 is knocked down, the tumors were found much larger, and when ARID2 was present, the tumors were either not formed at all or they were much smaller. And this is a comparison of the tumor weights, and there was a lot of tumor formation when ARID2 was knocked down. So using cell lines and animal models, we could confirm that ARID2 knockdown behaves like a tumor suppressor, because we see different assays showing reduction in or increase in tumorigenic properties. Finally, we had to show that the knockdown is actually a specific effect of ARID2 and not a non-specific effect. So for that, what we do is we express ARID2 back in the cells where we have knocked down ARID2 to show that you can recover. This is called a rescue experiment. But we went one step ahead and we also tried to rescue with a mutant. So one of the mutants we identified was a frameshift mutation, which resulted in a truncated protein. And another mutation that we identified was a 13 amino acid deletion. So these 2, along with the wild type, we tried to rescue the phenotype separately. And we performed 2 different assays. One was looking at cell viability. And we found that when you have ARID2 knockdown, the proliferation is completely reduced compared to the wild type, which is here. But when you have overexpressed wild type, then the the decrease in proliferation is lost, whereas when you do the mutants, you have an opposite effect because the mutants are inactivating, so the reduction in cell growth is not seen. And same effect we saw in migration experiment. So when you overexpress wild type, you see a reduction. When you knock down, you see an increase. And then when you have rescue with mutant, you don't see the reduction, but you rescue with the wild type, you see the reduction. So that shows that the knockdown was specific because you can rescue with overexpression of the wild type gene. But we also showed that the mutation that we identified were indeed important because they were inactivating the ability of the protein to act as a tumor suppressor because the mutants did not rescue the tumor suppressor activity in migration assay as well as in the cell proliferation assay. Okay, so then we went back to get some additional evidence to show that ARID2 is a tumor suppressor in this CRC subtype. So one of the simplest things to do is to show that if it's a tumor suppressor, its expression levels should be lower in general in tumors compared to normals. And from our data as well as a separate colorectal cancer data, we could show that the normal tissue had higher expression of ARID2 compared to the tumors. And we also confirmed this at protein level. So majority of the protein loss happened in the early onset sporadic rectal cancer subtype and not in the other forms of CRC. So although ARID2 is a tumor suppressor, but this data shows that it is a specific tumor suppressor for early onset sporadic rectal cancer, not for general colorectal cancer. And that is why probably it was missed in the screens which were done from the West because they were not looking at this subtype. So we have identified a novel tumor suppressor gene for colorectal cancer. Okay, and last but not the least, we also looked at other forms of inactivations of ARID2, again from the TCGA data. So if you have a missense mutation, the transcript levels are not perturbed, but if you have truncating mutations or copy number loss or a biallelic event, the transcript levels are lost in tumor. So this is data from various cancer types looking at what happens when you have different types of ARID2 mutation. This is also from TCGA data. And like we had done for calcium and fat signaling, we also looked at ARID2 from TCGA data, whether it affects survival analysis. Yes, it does. So it samples which have ARID2 alteration, they perform poorly compared to those which do not have ARID2 alteration. Okay, so to summarize the final part of the presentation, we were trying to find novel colorectal cancer genes, and using genomic profiling, using exome sequencing, we have identified a novel tumor suppressor gene for colorectal cancer, which is ARID2. Okay, so before I end, I should acknowledge the colleagues and collaborators who helped us in this work. So a very big thanks to all the surgical oncologists from various hospitals in Hyderabad, the Indo-American Cancer Hospital. We have Dr. Subramanyeshwar Rao and Dr. Shujit Patnaik, Dr. Mukta Srinivaslu from the MNJ Cancer Hospital, Dr. Shastri, Dr. Bhirappa from Nizam's Institute of Medical Sciences, and the two pathologists to help us to read all our IHC and other types of stainings we do on sections, Dr. Sanlata from Apollo Hospitals, Dr. Satish Rao from Krishna Institute of Medical Sciences. My initial training for microarrays was from Stanford University, where I worked with Dr. Jonathan Pollack, and Dr. Sabri Nathan I already mentioned from NCBS, who helped us with computational analysis for the next generation sequencing. And last but not the least, a great thanks to all the patients who consented to be part of these studies. To acknowledge the funding agencies, the initial part of the screening was funded by NIH, and the later part of study, which included microarrays and next generation sequencing, was funded by Indian funding agencies, DBT, DST, ICMR, CSAR, and also core funding from CDFT. So I end here, and I would be happy to answer any questions or any clarifications. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your enlightening lecture, and which is very informative and interesting one. with your due permission, I would like to ask some questions on behalf of the various participants.
Yeah,
So,
please.
may I, sir? Yes. So the first question is, which mutation is most commonly found in human colorectal cancer?
Okay, so what I have mentioned, if you look at the Western literature, APC mutation is the most common mutation you will find in colorectal cancer. For our patients, we found P53 to be the most commonly mutated gene. So that is the difference between West and our population. But when we say our population, I'm only talking about early onset rectal cancer. But if you look at whole colorectal cancer in India, then probably APC and P53 could be same. But in West, it's definitely APC.
Okay. So the next question is from Dr. Anjana Rani. Which genes are mutated in colorectal cancer?
Okay, so I already answered
I,
that.
yes, sir. I think this is
Yes.
the same question.
Right.
So, next question is from Dr. Raki Mishra. What are the different types of genomic alterations that can lead to a rectal cancer?
Right. So that part we have not looked at in great details, but we are doing that now. We have tried to address this question from both DNA as well as RNA. So what we did, which I did not present, we looked at copy number alterations in these tumor samples because, as I mentioned in the beginning, the Wnt activation actually drives chromosomal instability. So we were expecting to not find chromosomal instability in our samples, but we did find. We found copy number changes and structural aberrations in our samples, although Wnt signaling was not active. So that shows that either ARI2 mutations or the calcium and fat signaling can also drive chromosomal instability. What we have started now, and hopefully we'll be publishing it in the next few months, is to look at gene fusions using RNA sequencing data. So we have done RNA sequencing for around 40 samples, again same colorectal cancer subtype, and using computational analysis you can actually detect gene fusion. So gene fusions are based on chromosomal arrangements which bring two different genes close to each other. They could be within the same chromosome or from different chromosomes, but you get a hybrid transcript, like 5 prime is coming from one gene and 3 prime from other gene. There are many examples of these fusions, but using the computational analysis, we have actually identified many novel gene fusions. So basically, there are chromosomal aberrations in early onset sporadic rectal cancer as well.
Thank you, sir. I think the answer has satisfied the participant. So our next question is from Mr. Abhijit. Sometimes the evolutionary gene mutation unique to humans are blamed for risk of advanced cancers. So what is your opinion in this regard, sir?
Okay, so I'm not sure what the person means by evolutionary, but to me it means pathways which are conserved. So what I have shown is that most of the mutations happen in pathways which are conserved across evolution. The SWI/SNF complex is known to be mutated in 20% of all cancer types, and SWI/SNF is conserved in all eukaryotes, starting from yeast, Drosophila, reptiles, and mammals. That is very well known. So why are these mutations coming in such complexes? Is because cancer is a very basic disease. It involves very basic cellular processes, and all basic cellular processes are conserved across evolution. So it's not surprising that the mutations we found or others have found happens in pathways which are conserved across evolution, like transcription or replication or chromatin remodeling or cell signaling. All these pathways are very well conserved, or DNA repair.
Thank you, sir. And the next question is from Dr. Soumya Das. What is the main biomarker for detecting colorectal cancer?
Okay, so I'm not sure if there is established biomarker for colorectal cancer. What happens in the West is they go for screening. So you do a colonoscopy to identify benign tumors, and that is the best way to protect from colorectal cancer. And it is advised in the West that above 50 years of age, once a year, every adult should undergo colonoscopy. And if you can detect a small benign tumor, it can be removed very easily and you are protected from colorectal cancer. So for colorectal cancer, at least from the Western literature, the need for biomarkers have not yet arisen. But for us, also, if the colorectal cancer is rising in India, then probably we should also go for regular colonoscopy in the adult population, at least in families where there is a predisposition. Otherwise, if you look at these mutations, like there are circulating tumor DNA in the bloods of individuals if they have a tumor, and you can always isolate these and screen for mutations. But if you find a mutation, you will not know whether if you find APC mutation, you're kind of sure that there could be colorectal cancer. But if you find P53 or ARID2, because these genes are involved in different cancers, then establishing a particular cancer may be difficult. But perhaps screening for APC mutation as a biomarker could be a sure shot way of identifying colorectal cancer, but that's not being done because mostly people go for colonoscopy. So I don't know if we need biomarkers for colorectal cancer.
Okay, so this is the last question from Dr. Surjit Pathak, who is our guest. So why right side of the colon is more prevalent of DNA mismatch repair?
Yes, so that is something which people have been trying to answer for last 20 years. I don't think we have that answer, but for some reason, the right side of the ascending colon, we find more mismatch repair tumors, whereas in the left side of the descending colon, we find more of Wnt active tumors. It's not that it's 100% split. It could be 60-40. I mean, you do find rectal cancers which have microsatellite instability. There have been some hypotheses, but there is no clear-cut answer at the moment why we see this split.
Okay, sir. I think this was the last question from the participant. If we have more questions, then I think I can share the email address of yours
Sure.
to the
Yes,
participant so that their
definitely.
questions can be answered in future also.
Sure.
Thank you so much, sir, for being
Thank
with
you.
us. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Welcome, sir.